A win for free speech advocates and a loss for one Bakersfield actress. An appeals court has ruled an anti-Muslim film should not have been taken off of YouTube. John Velasquez is suspected of hitting and killing Patrick Mendez on Edison Highway early Sunday morning. Velasquez was allegedly drunk and street racing at the time of the crash. New tonight, a review board finds 2 Bakersfield police officers were within policy when they shot and killed a man back in March. A woman accused of murder in a road rage incident appeared in a California court on Tuesday. Crying and shaking, Darla Johnson entered a plea of not guilty. We're going to switch gears now. A new bill to raise the age for smoking in California to 21. Now another step closer to becoming a law. A family in Oregon got a little extra when they sold their home to a pizza shop owner. Free pizza forever. Italian police bust a major mafia drug ring based out of New York City. Across Kern County, actually kind of across America. That's where a team of local men have decided to race. The National Transportation Safety Board says they found the train had no equipment problems prior to its derailment. Life or death for the Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. We are moments away from finding out the answer to that question. Eyewitness News at 12:30 starts up right now.
Live in high definition from Fox 58 in Bakersfield. This is Eyewitness News at 12:30.
Welcome into Eyewitness News at 12:30. I'm Tom Murphy. And of course, this was after 14 hours of deliberation. Now, they've already convicted him on all 30 counts, and this is now the penalty phase of the death penalty trial. Tsarnaev was convicted last month of those federal charges. 17 of those charges carried the possibility of the death penalty. So that is the biggest question that we're about to get answered as we take a live look outside this courthouse in Boston. Life or death for Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. Right. And we are just hearing right now that he has been sentenced to death. The Associated Press has just reported that. Again, if you are just joining us, Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev has been sentenced to death by lethal injection for that 2013 attack at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. You'll remember there were 3 people that were killed. Martin Richard, just 8 years old, a student at a charter school in Boston. Crystal Campbell, 29 years old, of Massachusetts, and Lingzi Liu, a graduate student at Boston University. There were 3 victims. Those victims will obviously be remembered forever, and now Dzhokhar Tsarnaev will get the death penalty. That announcement coming just moments ago, just minutes ago. We are still looking live outside of that courtroom, and we will continue to check in throughout the broadcast and continue to go back out there to Boston. But that's the biggest news right now. Breaking news really across the entire country. Now let's go back to Kern County right now. It's a crazy transition after a story that's going to be one of the biggest stories of the entire year, folks. But something that we had, one of the biggest stories really of the month, of the early 2015 at least. Right. Rain, thunder, and more rain. Something else that we haven't seen very often in California recently, a flood advisory. Take a look at this video out of Fresno, a heavy thunderstorm. Cars across the area were stranded. City officials say although the intensity of rainfall was more than anticipated, maintenance crews called storm SWAT teams were dispatched across Fresno to locations that were hit by flooding and heavy rainfall. The storm broke rainfall records for the day in about a dozen different places across California. Not what we expected this time of year. It was something else. It's amazing how shocking it is at this point when you just, like, I looked outside yesterday and saw somebody walking with an umbrella. And to me, that was something out of outer space. So the last time lawmakers are pushing for increased rail safety following Tuesday's deadly Amtrak crash. And today in New York, Senator Chuck Schumer and Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal announced their 4-point rail safety plan outside of New York's Penn Station. The video that you're looking at right now are the tracks where the crash happened as the cleanup continues. Some lawmakers, including House Speaker John Boehner, say speed was the only factor in the derailment. But Schumer also blames the lack of funding and says his plan makes rail safety a top priority. New this hour, the House passed a controversial $612 billion defense bill just this morning. The bill maps out next year's military and national security programs. Republicans wanted to move extra money for defense spending to a special program in order to avoid cuts. Democrats were against the measure, saying that money should be used for other domestic programs. The Senate is considering a similar version of the bill. The president has threatened to veto. Meanwhile, President Obama also paid tribute to fallen police officers today. He was speaking at the 34th Annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service on Capitol Hill. He said law enforcement should be honored and respected for what they do on a daily basis. We now know the names of the 2 people who died in a crash involving an ambulance and a big rig near Fraser Park. Investigators say 50-year-old Christina Fort stole the ambulance Wednesday night and then crashed head-on into a semi driven by a 40-year-old Nelson Martinez from Los Angeles. Witnesses said the ambulance was traveling at 100 miles per hour. Both Fort and Martinez died in that crash. The CHP is investigating. We're going to step aside and take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, long live the King. A blues legend passes in the middle of the night. We remember B.B. King. Welcome back, everyone. We want to remind you about that breaking news that we gave you at the top of the hour at 12:30 as well. A sentence has come down in the Boston Marathon bombing penalty phase. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev sentenced to death.
Right, and as you can see, a lot of people out there awaiting this decision as it was. It kind of been, we expected right at the top of that 12 o'clock hour, and about 30 minutes later at the top of the 12:30 show here on KBFX, we got that decision live on the air that Dzhokhar Tsarnaev has been sentenced to death by lethal injection.
It was almost 2 years and 1 month, practically to the day, when that bombing happened at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. 3 people were killed, over 240 people were injured, and now a little bit of closure for all of the families, the entire country that was rocked.
And we've got a lot of reaction from this all across the country. Attorney General Loretta Lynch released a statement on the Boston Marathon bombing sentence. She said, but the ultimate penalty is a fitting punishment for this horrific crime, and we hope that the completion of this prosecution will bring some measure of closure to the victims and their families.
So Tsarnaev now will live in infamy with some of the most notorious terrorists that have tried to attack America, whether it be Osama bin Laden, Timothy McVeigh with the Oklahoma City bombings way back in the 90s, and now, like Timothy McVeigh, Tsarnaev will be sentenced to death.
Maybe the following next week, but for the time being, today's it for rainfall.
And, you know, one of the things that I notice whenever we have rainfall, just be very safe when you're driving, because there are too many accidents that happen, and a lot of them can be avoided. Drive safe, drive slow,
Take your time.
Drive safe, be
Take
smart.
your time.
B.B. King was 89 years old.
One of the beautiful things about being a great musician, making great music, is that music is timeless and it will live on forever.
Definitely, well said. All right.
There are smooth criminals and then there are bad bandits, and this next guy falls into the latter. You know the saying, if at first you don't succeed, well, it wasn't meant for everyone. Watch as he fails twice to steal an ATM from an Australian gas station. First the chain separates, then he's too far away, and finally he just gives up. So maybe that's why he was in a life of crime. He couldn't do anything, and he couldn't even do that well. Hey, one more time, we want to give you the biggest story of the day. It's one of the biggest stories of the entire year. The sentencing has come down in the Boston Marathon bombing suspect. Not the suspect anymore. He's been convicted, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, and now Dzhokhar Tsarnaev will be sentenced to death.
Definitely, and analysts are expecting that this can actually take a number of years. We're expecting a long process of appeals to come about this, so they're anticipating if he is put to death, it actually could take 10+ years at least, possibly.
Of course, all of this started April 15th, 2013, when those 2 bombs went off at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. 3 people were killed, over 240 people were injured. It really shook up the nation. It also inspired the entire Boston Strong movement, and now a little bit of closure for those families affected, for the entire country that has been affected, because the 2 people that were behind that will both be killed.
And as of now, he'll be shipped to a federal prison in Indiana.
We're out of here. We had a great show. We are hoping that you all have a great weekend. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.